Okay, planning board. We are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of East Hampton's Planning Board regular and work session for March 25th, 2026. We have a couple of public hearings today. We have a work session and we have a regular meeting. Just to make a little announcement at the beginning, I see a lot of folks here. You may be here for two of the actual public hearings, which are the McGarva Barn and the JHA Main Street. It's not a public hearing on the town code changes, just so you know. If you're here for that purpose, there'll be another public hearing for those code changes down the line. So we'll jump into it. And our first public hearing is JHA Main Street Office Site Plan. Chris Decker is going to handle that for the planning department. Lou is going to handle that for the planning board. The applicant is here, I see. Was proper notice given? Okay. All right. So we start with a description by the planning department of the project, and then the applicant will be given an opportunity to speak, and then the public. So go ahead, Chris. Kick us off.
I think Lou goes first to read the public hearing.
Oh, do you read the public hearing notice? Okay, go for it.
I think.
I don't want to step on the feet.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board on March 25th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. for the application of JHA Main Street Office Site Plan. The site location is 18,453 square feet, 0.424 acres, located at 261 Main Street, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-171-2-8. A site plan application has been submitted to convert the George L. Baker House, an existing historic residence, into an office use. The proposal involves relocating the historic residence closer to the street. The front yard setback would decrease from approximately 110 feet to 42.3 feet. Also proposed is to construct a 1,260 square foot finished basement for office areas and storage space, paving the existing driveway and adding 13 parking spaces to the rear of the building, including one accessible space. The existing sanitary system is proposed to be replaced by a low nitrogen sanitary system.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to add to that description, Chris?
I don't think there's much to add, but I can pull up the plans and show everything.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, but as Lou mentioned, it's a simple conversion of a historic residence to an office use. All the parking's to the rear, which is in keeping with the historic district guidelines in Amagansett. And now's the time for public comment on it, or if there's any questions from the board.
Okay. Any questions about the project from anyone present at the meeting or online for Chris? Okay. So we will allow comments from the public. Obviously, this is a public hearing. The comments are timed at 3 minutes. Could you give me my timer? Absolutely. I appreciate that. So let's start with who would like to be heard on this matter of the JHA Main Street is our first public hearing. Any comments? Okay. Is there anyone online who would like to comment about JHA Main Street?
Let's stand by just one moment. Make sure all the lines are open and clear. One moment, please.
Thank you.
And this is Matt Chapman calling in from LTV. Just making sure everything is good. And everything is good. And you have 0 callers on the line. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. So with that, I think we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on JHA Main Street.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
All in favor of closing the public hearing? All right, passed and carried. So we will move on to the McGarva Barn site plan special permit modification, and that is you, Jen.
Yep. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board on March 25th, 2026 at 6:30 PM. This hearing is in the matter of the application of the McGarva Barn Site Plan Special Permit Modification. The size and location of the property is 222,615 square feet or 5.1 acres, located at 181 Middle Highway, East Hampton, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-118-1-63. An application has been made seeking a modification to a previous site plan / special permit approval dated September 19th, 2007. The proposed modification would remove a firewall, add a curb cut, remove the performance bond, allow for a longer turnout time for the equines, and allow fence line irrigation. The original application approved a barn with 6 stalls, a grooming room, a tack room, a washroom, and a second-story hayloft. Additionally, 4 paddocks, a jumping ring, and 7 parking spaces were approved.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Chris, want to pull that up?
Eric is handling this one.
Okay, that's right.
I've got it. I think you need to check the after.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a far aerial photograph up on the screen showing the location of the property. It's just to the east of Middle Highway, which is where the principal access to the property is located through a flag strip. There's also access from the rear along Hunting Road, although under the site plan that is reserved as only an emergency fire access if necessary. I will show a closer aerial view of the property. And then we also have the site plan for the proposed modification. The public notice noted everything. And I think the key points here are that this is a past site plan approval with a modification of that approval sought. I would also add for the board that you have received 2 written public comments already to the record. So just a heads up on that.
Good. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, so there have been some public comments received, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in the meantime, is there anyone in the room who would like to comment on the project? Tom?
Thomas Crouch, Wayland Filer, PLC for the applicants. Yeah, so just to continue what Eric was saying, this is a modification. There are 4 conditions of approval that we're seeking to either remove or modify. I'll just go through them one at a time. The first is removal of condition requiring the applicant to install a firewall. In the original approval, the planning board required an applicant to install a firewall located 50 feet from the entrance of the parcel. That would be off of Middle Highway, which is about 700 feet this way. And then the barn itself is obviously toward the back of the property. That would be another 300 or so feet from where the firewall would be installed. It's typically installed in the town right of way, and the fire department takes over maintenance and control of it. However, there's now a fire hydrant installed on Hunting Road, much closer to the barn, approximately 700 feet from the property line, and another about 150 feet from the barn once you're on the property. So the firewall is down here on Hunting. It's between 27 and 25 Hunting on this side of the road. So that's about 700 feet to this point, and then another about 150 to the barn. So it's much closer. This is a really positive development in terms of fire safety for the applicant and the surrounding properties. Per an email from Chief Fire Marshal David Brown, the FD feels much more confident with a hydrant supplied by unlimited public water rather than to rely on an electric well. So it's not only a distance improvement, the quality is much better. The fire department feels this is a much better situation as far as fire safety. And then as far as the access, there's going to be a curb cut right here off of Hunting, and it's just for fire safety purposes only. It'll be labeled that way on the site plan. It is not a general access to the property. So that's the first one. The second one is removal of condition requiring a performance bond. The planning board eliminated that requirement in 2011, so the applicant just requests that the board, agree to remove it for this application. The third condition is a removal of a condition requiring a typical 4-hour turnout. The original site plan requires the applicant to submit a pasture management plan, which includes a quote, 4-hour typical turnout for the horses. There are at least 3 reasons why this condition should be removed. First, the condition is vague and unenforceable. We believe the condition allows for the horses to be out of the barn for only 4 hours in a typical day, but that's not stated anywhere within the original site plan approval. Also, what is a typical turnout? Would that be the average turnout in a week or a month? It's not really clear. There's no further detail in the original site plan approval, so the applicant is left with an undefined obligation to limit the turnout of horses. Second, this condition unlawfully interferes with the applicant's business operations by imposing inconsistent hourly restrictions without support in the record. I put in a case law that I provided the council. Cases Home Depot USA versus Town Board of the Town of Hempstead, 6383rd, 938. And I attach it to this letter. Finally, even if the condition were well-defined and easy to understand, it is unhealthy for the horses to have a restriction on turnout. Dr. Nora Kleps, DVM, provided a letter to the planning board stating, quote, "It is my opinion as a horse owner and equine small animal veterinarian of over 30 years that equines should have unlimited turnout." So among other reasons, the planning board should not continue to impose a condition on an approved horse farm that would harm the horses there. And then finally, we're just asking to modify the condition requiring underground irrigation, defense line irrigation. Underground irrigation in the paddocks would, it would be problematic because the horses are going to step on the sprinkler heads. So fence line irrigation is an industry standard. We're just asking that you modify that. So I did review several of the 2 public comments that were received. I think in my comments that I just made, I think I outlined most of the issues that were brought up, but there are several others that were kind of outside the scope of this hearing. But I believe there's some confusion where we are in the process with the neighbors.
Yeah, and Thomas, we will, this is not normally an opportunity to kind of refute that stuff. It's really a matter of just us hearing from folks. So, and we understand that many of the things you've already described are things that we have discussed and already,
Right.
agreed to, right?
I mean, I've got the comments and this is kind of my chance to speak on them. So
All right.
Okay.
All right, but you just,
Go
if you
ahead
can
quickly.
wrap it up quickly, that
Yeah,
would be
sure.
great.
I think there's some confusion about where we are in the process because this site plan hasn't been implemented yet. My clients can't get a building permit because they haven't met all the conditions for a building permit, 2 of which are the fire well and the performance bond. So, we're happy to, move forward with construction and meet all, implement all the different plans as far as landscaping and drainage and build the barn and build the manure pit and all the other things that were mentioned in the comments. But where we are in the process is that we have to get clarity on these issues before we can go get a building permit. So I just wanted to make sure that that was cleared up.
Yeah, okay.
So, anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. So, as per the comments that have come in, some of which you've already seen and commented on just now, we're going to leave the record open for another week for you to formally respond to them. We kind of thought, since some of them came in very recently, like today, that you would perhaps want an opportunity to do that. So we're gonna do that. But in the meantime, if there are other members of the public who want to speak on this particular application, please make yourself known. And we'll give you 3 minutes to talk about it. Okay. All right. Going once. All right. Is there anyone online or on the telephone who would like to speak, Matt?
You have 0 calls on the line. Thank you.
Okay.
So I make a motion to,
Can I just ask for, if you're going to leave it open for a week, is it just a week for me to respond to written comments? Like no other comments can be received from the public?
No, it's for you to respond
yeah.
to the
So
comments that have been received.
exactly, that's okay. So I was just going to say I make a motion to close the public
Excuse
portion
me
of the
one
hearing.
second. May I interrupt? We
Yes.
now have a caller on the line.
Okie dokie.
Would you like to take this caller now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Stand by.
We would.
And
Hello?
caller ending in 1732. You are live.
Yeah, hi. My name's Brad
Yes.
Carson, and I believe you received my email today. One of the
Yes.
neighbors that
One of the emails
emailed
you received?
comments
Yeah.
today.
Yes. Okay, yes, if you can, what is your address, Brad, for the record?
It's 185 Middle Highway.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, so if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, please go ahead.
Well, my question is, is it helpful at all for me to read my email into the record, or is it already part of the record? I don't want to be repetitive or waste anyone's time.
It is part of the record, and there will be a response.
Okay, and what if I'm not, what if I think the response is not complete? Is the response going to be from you guys or from the attorney that just spoke?
We do not debate at a public hearing like this. We hear from the public, we take in comments, and we respond to them thoughtfully after the meeting.
Okay. All right, so I will hear from you guys regarding my email.
The application will be responded to in general.
Exactly.
You may not receive specific responses to your specific comments or questions, but you will receive in the next iteration of this board hearing this application, the public comments that are received will have been responded to.
Okay. And how I receive notice as to when that's going to occur?
Everything is posted on the town's website the Friday prior to any meetings. That includes the agenda for the meeting the following Wednesday, along with any documents and planning department memos that are applicable to the application.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, do you want to close?
So I make a motion to close the public portion of this hearing and leave the record open for the applicant to respond to the public comments that have been received for another week until next Wednesday, whatever date that is. April 1st. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed and carried. All right,
Thank you.
public portion closed. Thank you. All right, so the first matter on our work session is the Steiner Oasis LLC subwaiver. Again, that's Chris for the planning department and Jen for the board. Is the applicant present? Great, okay. Let's take it over. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thank you. This is the Steiner Oasis subdivision waiver at 77 Wilson Lane. The board's second review of this application. It was last reviewed last year, March 19th. And just showing the parcel here, the yellow shaded area is the village. Clear area is the town. So the subject parcel's in the B residence zoning district, and it's also in groundwater management zone 5.
Good job.
Historically, the parcel's only been subject to village zoning regulations, and the existing improvements are all indicated on a 2008 certificate of occupancy from the village. I'm just going to pull up the submitted map here. Bear with me, it's being a little slow right now. So the application is to divide the existing 1.52 acre parcel along the town village border. Lot 1 would be 40,642 square feet entirely within the village. Lot 2 would be 22,978 square feet entirely within the town. Both lot sizes conform with the minimum lot area requirements of their jurisdictions, and the town planning board is only reviewing town code compliance for lot 2, and the village is reviewing for lot 1. Both municipalities will effectively approve the same map. During the last review, the town planning board agreed to allow the village planning board to act as lead agency for SECRA. Therefore, the town will be an involved agency and cannot consider the application complete and ready for public hearing until the village issues a final approval. One update since our memo was posted is the applicant submitted written correspondence from the county health department that the county already considered these lots as separate buildable lots. Therefore, their approval should not be required, but the town and village should continue to review for conformance with their respective jurisdictions. For example, we're reviewing to make sure there's an adequate common driveway and easement to the town lot, although the village may recognize them as separate at this time. So just going over the issues from the discussion last year, the first was to revise the proposed access easement as an access and utility easement. That has not been done yet, but the applicant can make that quick change to the notation on the revised map. And the next was to revise the common driveway to provide adequate drainage and turnaround. Revised common driveway plan was provided and the town consulting engineer signed off on that, so we don't see any issue. Pending the revised easement notation, there should be no outstanding issues for the engineer review. The fire marshal also signed off on this proposal, and then the other approval would be the Suffolk County Planning Commission review, since it's on the boundary of the town. The village will likely lead that referral process, given they're the lead agency for SECRA. And then regarding the title of the map, our memo states that the proposed map and driveway plan should be updated with the title Steiner Oasis LLC. However, we can just note that we'll first coordinate with the village and the applicant to ensure that both municipalities are approving the same map. We've yet to hear back from the village. So just want to make sure, matter of record keeping, that everything's consistent between the two. So the application was revised accordingly, except for the notations on the easement and the title. If the board agrees, the planning department can coordinate with the applicant and village to confirm the appropriate title. And as mentioned, it appears county health department is not necessary, so we'll remain coordinated with the village and now cannot hold a public hearing until the village does their final approval as lead agency. So if you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? Dan, do you want to be heard?
Sure.
Just name and address, please, for the record.
Dan Weaver, George Walbridge, Surveyors PC. On behalf of the applicant. Chris, thank you for your memo. I'll be quick on this. We're perfectly willing to change the label for the access and utility easement. That's not a problem. We'll take care of that. And the name, the title is no problem either, as far as I'm concerned. So as long as the village agrees, we'll change the title to Steiner Oasis LLC. We should be on the village agenda for their April 9th meeting. So I'm hoping by that point, Chris will get the comments he's waiting for back from the village, and then we'll be able to move on. So that's all I have. Does anybody has questions?
Any questions for Dan? Okay. Jen, it's you again.
This seems very straightforward, and I think, Dan just answered the two questions, so I have nothing further to add.
Anyone else have any comments, thoughts, questions? Okay, yeah, pretty clean, right? Yeah. Does the planning board agree the proposed common driveway plan is acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous all around. Does the planning board agree the proposed access easement should be relabeled as an access and utility easement?
Yes.
Okay, all around. Does the planning board agree that the map title should be revised to reflect the project title Steiner Oasis LLC to be consistent?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous all around. Great. Okay. We're good. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Chris. All right, so our next matter is the Prospect Hill final subdivision. Sarah, that's you for the planning department, and Ava for the board.
Alrighty, good evening, board. So the application was last reviewed by the planning board in October of 2025. Application has been made to modify the covenants and restrictions of the Prospect Hill subdivision, lot 14, approved October 26, 1983. Just to review. Let's So this was the original building envelope approved in 1983. The house was built in 1998. The building envelope was altered once in 2002. That's what this is for the pool and pool deck. And then this is what they're proposing now. The subject parcel is zoned A2 residence and is considered improved and partially cleared. The proposal would be to alter the building envelope a second time, specifically removing a portion of buildable space to the northwest and adding a portion to the southeast, as shown on the proposed survey. There is no net change in square footage of the building envelope. The existing building envelope is 9,753 square feet. The proposed reduction is 1,161, and the added area is the same. The applicant is also proposing to remove the structures not on the certificate of occupancy, including the shed, deck, stone patio, and mulch path. The mulch path and stone patio are currently within the scenic easement. So issues for discussion, the planning board last reviewed this on October 22nd, 2025. I'll review some of the comments made by the planning board, the applicant's response, and the planning department analysis. The first comment was that the board has yet to determine if a change of circumstance is present and has requested that the applicant submit the change in circumstances in writing. The applicant submitted one letter on November 26th and an addendum on March 5th, outlining the property history and potential changes of circumstance. The November 2025 letter notes that since the 1984 subdivision and the 2002 modification to the building envelope, the lot has been developed and the owners have faced limitations due to the envelope's placement and the site's topography. The applicant further argues that the 2002 amendment itself represents an additional change as it unnecessarily restricted construction on areas of lot 14 that neither contains steep slopes nor are visible from East Lake Drive or other distant points on Montauk. They also claim that the new legislation has affected the property as it was originally zoned A residential and later rezoned to A2. The applicant suggests that the prior board might have located the envelope differently had the zoning been A2 at the time of the subdivision. Lastly, they cite a personal change in circumstance, expressing a desire to expand their home without full redevelopment. The planning department, however, considers these changes partially self-imposed and therefore a weak basis for a legitimate change in circumstance. So thus the planning department met with the applicant to discuss these potential changes of circumstance. And following that meeting, the applicant supplied an additional letter in March of 2026, where they identify an additional change in circumstance related to property setbacks. So when the original subdivision was approved, building envelopes were established to protect slopes and view sheds. At that time, the zoning code did not impose a fixed front yard setback. Instead, the pyramid law was applied, which required the horizontal distance from lot lines to equal the vertical height of the structure. Numeric setbacks were not enforced, and the envelopes were not designed with setbacks in mind. So under the current zoning code, lots of this size must comply with a 40-foot front yard setback. The existing building envelope provides only a 35-foot setback from the front lot line, making a portion of the envelope unusable under current standards. So this creates a dead space within the approved envelope and reduces the buildable area. Just to kind of give you all a visual, hopefully you can see my point. So in this red area, a portion towards this top would be unusable by the applicant without a variance, that is. So at the October meeting, the planning board had several other comments, including that it supports the requested modification. The board agreed that the applicant should confirm compliance with the original subdivision requirements on stormwater management. The applicant stated that a dry well was installed by the previous owner, as shown on the survey and noted on the 2010 certificate of occupancy. They further indicated that if an addition to the house is constructed, additional stormwater mitigation may be required, and they expressed willingness to accept a condition requiring such mitigation if necessary. And the board also agreed that it would require a public hearing for this modification request. I'll just note the planning department thinks that this is a legitimate change in circumstance, as the original planning board could not have anticipated the later adoption of fixed setbacks. At the time, the intent of the envelope design was to mitigate environmental impacts, not enforce setbacks. The proposed adjustment to the building envelope does not increase its size or encroach on sensitive areas. Rather, it relocates the envelope to comply with current zoning and setback requirements. The planning department views this as a reasonable change for the property, and the board should determine if they agree.
Great.
Answer any questions?
Good, thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah?
I have a question.
Sure.
The applicant in his letter says that the front setback is 50 feet, and you in the memo say it's 40 feet. Who's correct?
Yeah, 40 feet is correct.
Okay,
That's something I double checked as well.
okay.
Is that it? Anyone else? Jameson, would you like to be heard?
I'm okay, unless you guys want me to.
I think we're good. Do you have any questions for Jameson? We
No,
can
I-
bring her up if not.
I was just going to say my comments. If not,
Okay, all right.
Jameson, thank you for both of the detailed, comments and explanations. I actually did find the history fairly interesting myself. And I do feel that after the March, the March 5th response certainly qualifies for a change in circumstance. If new construction was put on this parcel, it would be completely non-conforming. So I think the change in circumstances has been qualified. I do feel that with regards to the the stormwater management, I think that should be a condition if there is additional occupancy, and that needs to be reviewed. That would be a condition of that, and a public hearing obviously should be required. But I think we're good.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments on Prospect Hill?
I agree with Ava. I think we should specifically indicate that the change of circumstance is the setback issue and not any of the personal changes that the applicant had suggested.
That's a good point.
Good
Yeah.
point. That is a good point. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? So clarify, if you would, Ava, your thoughts about the stormwater issue and what we might need to do to go forward.
Because it mentioned if an addition to the house is constructed, so at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no real plans in place, Jameson, for an addition. This is just to amend the building envelope, correct?
Yeah. Okay, I'll come.
Yep. Name and address, please, for the record, Jameson.
Ms. McWilliams from the Adam Miller Group. Yes, that's correct.
So-
This was the first step in hoping to establish the space necessary to be able to construct a small addition on the side that made sense for like the layout of the house. But as far as I know, nothing has actually been planned. But my thought in response to that comment and why I included that was that if they were to increase, I guess, like the roofed areas, so much so that there's the calculation that calculates how much runoff you need to catch and all that, then of course we would, comply with any of those additional requirements.
Okay.
But that, as far as the existing stormwater that does, that we had plotted on the survey, that is sufficient for the existing structure.
So as plans come through an application comes through for some addition, we can deal with that
It
issue
would need to be
then.
compliant.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It's a code requirement anyway.
It's a code
That's what
requirement,
I-
yeah.
Yeah, I would guess.
I think the building department does also
Yeah.
look at that, but if
Yeah.
the board wanted to just feel more comfortable, like we'll agree to, some additional language, whatever you guys think is appropriate.
Okay. How do we feel about that? Do we wait for the next application, or do we want to make comment about the stormwater scenario now?
I feel like it's already codified,
Mhm.
and so the building department will catch it when plans are
Just want to be
submitted.
sure how we all felt.
That's how I feel. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
I
Okay.
won't speak
with
for
that.
anybody else.
Yeah, I think.
This application was just for the building.
It's a good catch because it's an
Yeah.
important situation in this very steep, topography. So, and thanks for being willing to do it, Jameson. Thank you. So we'll then, if there's no other questions or comments, anything for Jameson, we'll go to the questions, which are: does the planning board feel that a change of circumstance is present, and that change of circumstance is the change to fixed setbacks?
Yes.
Okay, we'll identify that specifically. I think that's a great idea. Does the planning board support the requested building envelope modification application?
Yes.
Okay. Does the planning board find the proposal complete and ready for public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Good to go. Thank you, Jameson. Good to see you. Okay. Our next matter is the Surf Lodge stage. The applicant is here, I see. And Sarah, is this you again?
It is.
Okay, great. And Lou, this is you? Okay.
So an application has been made to construct a new stage on an existing deck. The existing stage is to be removed and the new 262 square foot stage will be constructed in the same general area with a slightly different footprint. A plexiglass acoustic barrier and sound absorbing materials are proposed as part of the plan. The subject parcel is zoned B residence and contains 2 legally pre-existing non-conforming commercial uses in the form of a restaurant and motel. It is situated along Edgemere Road in Montauk and is adjacent to Fort Pond, a New York State significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat. I incorrectly stated Lake Montauk in my memo. Fort Pond is the correct location. The northwestern section of the property contains a bulkhead, while the southwestern portion is separated by a steep embankment. The entirety of the property is situated within the Harbor Protection Overlay District, or HPOD. It should also be noted that the property was the subject of a stipulation of settlement between the owners and the town of East Hampton in June of 2016, which required a number of specific conditions and improvements, some of which are still applicable. It should also be noted that the proposed parking on the current survey was part of a previous site plan. No additional new parking is proposed as part of this application. So this is the parking that is not part of this application that was already approved as part of the previous site plan. And just to run through the plans and renderings with the board quickly. So this red line is the existing stage and what is in black is what is proposed. So now this is the existing stage. And then this is what is proposed. So it's actually altering a little bit in configuration and facing away from the water now a little bit more.
Sir, can you just point out on so those renderings where the current one is on those renderings you're on?
Yeah, so it's in the same general location, and I think this image is helpful. So the red line is where it is now.
Gotcha. All right.
And then the black is what is proposed.
Okay.
Great.
So it's going to be facing more east than it was.
Yes.
Where, Sarah, I'm sorry, is the acoustic barrier? Is it basically the band shell behind the stage?
Yes.
So there's nothing in front of it, just behind?
So this project is a type 2 action pursuant to Seeker in Chapter 128 of the Town Code, and thus is not subject to additional review at this time. As mentioned, this lot is considered pre-existing and non-conforming, and no additional clearing or coverage is proposed. The proposed location of the new stage will require 2 variances and a natural resources special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. 1 variance of 97 feet is required in order to construct the new stage 3 feet from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 47 feet is required to construct the stage 3 feet away from the western front yard lot line where a 50-foot setback is required. I wanted to review a few parts of the stipulation of settlement, the ones that are applicable to this application. Most of them are pertaining to zoning, noise, music permit laws, and other laws and regulations. In summary, the provisions of the settlement are related to the queuing of patrons and the music permit for the property. So the music permit is subject to special conditions, which are outlined in the stipulation. To highlight some, total occupancy on the premises is limited to 395 people. No more than 50 additional people may be on the premises for queuing. No outdoor music is permitted after 8 p.m. Live music is only permitted between May 15th and September 15th. and is only permitted 5 days per week and on Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. Live music is limited to 2 hours per day and under no circumstances may be performed after 8 p.m. Live music is prohibited at all other dates and times unless an assembly permit is approved. And within 30 days of the stipulation back in 2016, the defendants were to implement all components of the 2010 sound mitigation plan or an equivalent plan as approved by the Office of the Town Attorney. In terms of lighting, the applicant should clarify if any additional lighting is proposed for the stage or outdoor area, and if so, they should submit a plan and comply with the town code. Onto the noise and engineering review. A sound evaluation of the existing stage was conducted in 2019 by SoundSense, which found that with appropriate mitigation, that the new stage orientation is expected to result in sound levels from the stage that are equal to or lower than current sound levels. The planning department had a civil engineer and acoustic engineer review, which was completed to assess potential noise impacts of the proposed change. The town engineer noted in their memo that from a civil engineering perspective, no objection was taken to the proposed site plan application. The additional technical sound review was completed by AKRF, and they had specific comments, some of which are as follows. The first is that the measured sound levels from the existing stage orientation used to validate the exterior noise propagation model appear to have been measured off axis from the sound system. As loudspeakers can be highly directional at mid and high frequencies, this modeling approach would tend to underestimate environmental noise levels for on-axis receivers when modeling directional noise sources as point sources. Secondly, in addition to the A-weighted levels provided, the applicant should also provide source sound levels and predicted future results at each receiver on an octave band basis for review. Third, the applicant should comment on the manufacturer or model of and height above grade for the stage loudspeakers. Fourth, the applicant should add a discussion of whether acoustic instruments or instruments amplified by means other than the house sound system are expected. Fifth, the applicant should confirm whether Surf Lodge has obtained a music entertainment permit with the town of East Hampton and confirm anticipated hours of outdoor music. And sixth, the limiter setting procedure appears to be incomplete. The procedure should be amended to include verification that increased output signal from the soundboard does not result in increased sound levels at verification locations. The planning department notes that the data used in the modeling is outdated at almost 7 years old. Per the information provided, the data was collected July 14th, 2019, during a performance on a Sunday. The planning department recommends that a new sound study be collected and that the AKRF comments be taken into account in this new study. The planning department notes that without the new data and revised study, the potential for noise impacts from the proposed change cannot be adequately understood and evaluated. The board should determine if it agrees. Onto fire prevention, no further review is required per the fire marshal. Onto necessary elements of site plans. The following items are not part of the current site plan. The board should determine if they would like to waive these requirements. The first are dimensions between each structure are not currently shown on the survey, but the planning department does not feel this information is necessary. The board should determine if it agrees. Secondly, lighting and landscaping plans have not been provided. Should the applicant not be proposing any additional landscaping or lighting at this time, and provided the board does not require any additional lighting or landscaping, the planning department recommends waiving this requirement, but the board should determine if it agrees. And third, techniques by which natural features may be preserved on site have not yet been submitted. However, it is anticipated that this will be discussed further with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So in conclusion, the planning department notes that this application is incomplete at this time and advises the applicant to submit revised and additional plans, as well as a response letter. The planning department recommends that a new sound study be conducted in order to evaluate impacts based upon more recent data and address the technical comments regarding how the sound levels associated with the new stage are calculated. One last note is that when the planning department conducted a site visit, it appeared that some of the structures were not currently approved or on the survey. Just as a reminder, the applicant should note all the structures on the property or it should be applied for at this time or removed. That's all.
Can you enumerate what those are, Sarah?
Yeah, so they were, it appeared there were day beds in this sand area over here to the west.
They were what?
They were like day beds.
David.
With a cover over them,
Yeah,
kind
they
of a
did have
permanent
cover over
structure?
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have a picture of them for tonight, but yeah, they appeared to be permanent structures.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions for Sarah before we ask the applicant to speak?
Sarah, just to confirm, the applicant does not have a music entertainment permit.
I'll let the applicant speak to that. I didn't see one in the property record, but I could have missed it.
All right, and is there anywhere in the town code a decibel level limit?
Eric, do you know of one? I don't.
There is, yeah.
I couldn't.
There are noise standards in the town code. However, you know, those apply to sound that's generated and measured at either a residential or commercial property line. With a music entertainment permit, usually there's some agreement, you know, understanding that they're going to exceed that for a certain amount of time. So yes, there are codified noise restrictions. They're chapter 185, I believe. But I think a lot of the, you know, when they're using the soundstage will sort of be outside of the, you know, the realm of that.
So it doesn't apply, basically.
I mean, it does. The noise standards apply to every property, but I think at least in the context of, you know, evaluating the sound output from when they have amplified music, you know, using the soundstage, you know, it's not applicable in that context.
Okay, thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. David Kirst from Matthews, Kirst, Cooley, and Choron, 241 Panville Road, East Hampton, for the applicant. First, just to address the music permit, that record's kept by the town clerk. It's permit number 60. It was renewed this year, picked up. It's on premises at the property. So there is a valid music permit. Apparently that gets renewed every year by submitting a simple verification form. To address the question regarding the decibel levels, there definitely are requirements for that in the town code. I'm sure code enforcement will take measurements at the property line if there's any complaints and issue violations as they do with every other restaurant, bar, whatnot that has any sort of music. So that's a code enforcement issue we'll be complying with. So the question regarding the extent of the acoustic barrier, can we see, do you have the plans?
Sure, which ones? I have these ones.
Yep. If you see on the plans there, this area here is actually a plexiglass panel that's along that side of the deck. So there is an acoustic barrier beyond just the shell that does extend out along the one side of the deck in the area that the current stage is in.
I see.
Maybe it will.
So facing it
wing.
to the right, kind of, if you're facing the new stage. To the north.
If you're facing away from the water, it's gonna be on the left-hand side.
If you're facing the stage itself, it's all right. Cool.
Yes. Do you have, can you, A100? It's along right here.
Okay.
Is that a fence to that side there, right where your cursor is, Sarah? Is that a, what
It's
is that?
the deck railing, and there's stairs down from the deck.
So there would be no sound mitigation on the other side of the band, right there?
The stairs are.
No, the shell
Mhm.
closes off on No, it extends on that side.
Okay.
But not on the front side, on the front side of the property, like if you.
No, I mean, that goes right into the building.
Well, is that the building or the deck?
So it's the building.
That's the
That's building.
This is the deck, this is the building.
Gotcha, okay.
There is no proposed landscaping or lighting, which is why no landscaping or lighting plans have been submitted. There's no change to parking, there's no change to occupancy. There's no changes to any of those items, which is why there's nothing submitted in that regard. Takes care of everything that I have the technical ability to address.
Okay.
So with me today is Bonnie Schneider from SoundSense to address the comments from AKRF regarding the sound study, which we feel, once you hear from her, I think hopefully you'll agree with us that it does not need any sort of update.
We can't accept
any.
at the meeting, no. Please submit them to the building department.
Or
yeah.
the planning department.
Okay, I make one for everyone.
Yes, you can give them to Sarah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll drop them off tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Super. Okay,
Name and address, please, for the
my
record.
name is Bonnie Schneider. I am a founder and CEO of a company called SoundSense, which is an acoustic engineering company. And we have a history here in East Hampton. So I moved here in the 80s, and my background is I have a bachelor's in math, master's in mechanical engineering, and my PhD work with signal processing, which means I'm educated to mathematically model signal and noise. And when I came here, I was doing classified work for DARPA. I hadn't started my family, had my children here, and then that was when I realized I couldn't be like locked involved doing classified work for DARPA and be a good mom. So I started a company, and it was called South Fork Technological Consultants. And all I did was consulting. And every once in a while, someone would say, "This isn't working quite like you said it was going to." And I go, "It's not an art, it's a science." I went in the field, and I realized that some of the time the material was swapped out because something looked just like it, or it wasn't installed properly. So now 20 plus patents later, in the year 2000, I did a reset. My company is called SoundSense. And basically we give a solution set, we mathematically model it. I can't tell you what I did at DARPA, but I can tell you that it had to do with far field, as well as just the analysis of how sound travels through an object. Far field means long distance, like the analysis that was performed for Surf Lodge. And we basically did a solution set. It includes SoundSense materials or equivalent. That requires them to submit to us for what the equivalent is if they want to. And then we also have installation crews to give a level of a guarantee, and we do testing. So I thought I would give an example of some of the materials. There's many variations to this, but these are some of the materials. Oh, I can't give this to you?
No.
Okay. So basically, there's barriers and absorbers. Absorbers are such that it reduces the amount of sound that's reflected off of it. What I would like to do is, with that background, in case you didn't know me, you now know that my education and my training is mathematically model sound and noise. And now I want to address the issues of AKRF. So in the memo that you will be receiving, I did it in order of their comments and my responses to them. So the first thing is that AKRF basically said that there was a problem because we were off axis or on axis, and it was not necessarily looking at how the sound was traveling from the speakers. And I don't know if they came out here, but it is a very complicated nature, because
You have sound that is bouncing off of buildings. You have sound that is like, the speakers are not shooting sound out, they're shooting angled into the sand for one, an aspect of it doesn't go as far, but also has a variation and a slight beautiful dispersion. And then also there is that whole dynamic of, because of the nature of these speakers and trying to contain it within the area, you can have problems with what's called superposition. And in the article I referenced, there's some great, all you do is Google superposition and it'll show you how waves can, if you have a phase coming like this and it strikes a wall, it's coming up like this. If it comes back down, that becomes additive. So now in some areas it could be very loud, or if it goes opposite phase, and here I'm trying to do a sound wave, if it goes opposite phase, that's the equivalent of like active noise cancellation. So it literally, there are areas where you will not hear sound as well, or all of a sudden it is amplified. So the whole analysis had to do with we took many readings. They were both on and off axis so that we could determine where there was superposition. It's actually a wonderful game to try to outsmart these waves. And then also there is the land across the street, and its foliage and its elevation is such that it interacts with the waves. So all of this was taken into account. And I do have to apologize, on the report that we gave, we talked a lot about earlier analysis, earlier years where we took readings in that analysis, and that was used for when we did the most recent analysis, which was in 2025. And the reason why was in April of 2025, we were hired to look at this, realizing that there's no way that we could, we have to get the latest readings. We were told speakers don't change, just the stage is shifting. But in order to document exactly what was going on with those speakers, we wanted it to be during the summer. And so we decided that on July 5th, we were going to go there. That was a great time, very popular time. It was packed, trying to get readings while we were jammed into a tiny space while everyone was having a great time. It was difficult, and yet we succeeded in doing it. We had 2 engineers and I had an assistant with me, and we took all those readings. So going back to our response to AKRF, we did take both on and off axis, and I tried to go into some details as to why we did that, because of the complicated nature relative to the superposition having to do with reflection off of water, the buildings, the dynamic of the foliage and the sand itself. And then also they had asked for octave band data, which we're happy to give, but we took so much data. I did provide an example of looking at it as, when you do the analysis, there's sound power levels, and you have to basically, there's certain types of readings that you do at a distance and certain types of readings that are independent of distance. And we looked at max, L max, meaning the maximum level. So we provided all that information, but only as like a starting point. We talk a lot of times to AKRF is a very good company. I'm happy to talk to their engineer and to find out exactly what data they would like, and we could provide that. But I submitted an example so that you could show them, we have all this data, and it all does come from 2025, with the realization that if the speakers aren't going to change, it's only the stage that's going to change. And we want to take perspective on what is going on with the dynamics of any type of the foliage, et cetera. We wanted to make certain we did it. There's a mention about noise code. Outdoor noise is limited, is basically per the agreement, is limited can go up to 8 p.m., which means it's daytime code. So in our report, we talk about how we would do the analysis relative to once everything is set up, where the readings would have to be taken, which would indicate that in it would meet the daytime code. So that was taken into account when we did the analysis. And so the second thing had to do with requiring recent data, tons of it, and that was done in our analysis that we provided and supportive as to the final solution set for what we needed to do. It was not easy, but it is doable. And Sound Plan is a well-known, documented mathematical simulation program. I have my own, but it is very old, and my engineers wouldn't know how to use it because it's written in Fortran, so we use the Sound Plan.
Can I interrupt you? We are not sound engineers. You know, you are. We're not mathematicians. You are. With all due respect to your expertise in this arena, we have an engineering firm who does have expertise in this, and I think we need to discuss how we want to kind of hook you up with them to make sure that everything that we need, which is that the neighbors around this be happy and know that we did our best to mitigate the sound problem, which is the key problem next to parking, which we're not discussing tonight, is really the thing that is on the minds of the people who live in the neighborhood, right? So I think, you know, if no one else has another idea, that we should perhaps bring the discussion to the board and leave you there, if you don't mind, for questions.
Oh, okay, good. And so basically, everything that they brought up is in the memo. I made sure I itemized it in accordance to what they said. And the kind of the concluding factor is that, yes, I should talk to them and find out what other information they would want so that they could give you an answer independent of us.
So I think what we're going to decide is how we want that to happen. Is that just a discussion with them to see if you can answer their questions, or do we want a new study? I didn't realize there was one from 2025.
Oh, it's extensive.
I just wanted to clarify in the cover letter from SoundSense, it says that the data was collected in 2019. So is that a typo?
The data that was used for 2019 was to basically calibrate the system. So the sound plan analysis that was done was calibrated with the 2019 data so that we could get it ready for July so that we could quickly turn it around. It's not easy. It's not like you could basically say, oh, here are the speakers and whatever. You have to basically, because it is such a complicated nature with all the reflections and diffusions and superposition, basically you go and you put it in there and then you use the data points and you say, okay, I'm going to turn on the speakers. Am I getting the right answer?
So I have a question related to the 2019 versus 2025. Since the orientation of the stage is changing, how can the data points used from the way the stage was in 2019 be applicable to what's happening in 2026?
Right. So basically, we set up the sound plan, calibrated it with the 2019 data. Then when we got the readings that we took July 5th of 2025, we then put that information in and we rotated the stage. So the program is smart enough that it'll say, oh, okay, the speakers are here and the stage is rotated this way. The speakers are in the same location, except for some of the ones by the stage, and 3 of them are actually being eliminated because of the way that the direction has changed. And we did all that in the program.
And that's all explained in this new memo that you've just dropped?
Yes.
Or that you'll drop off tomorrow?
Best I could without getting too wordy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to bring the conversation to the board, and Lou is going to lead the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. We're not sound engineers. I don't have a PhD in anything. But I did take some of the points that AKRF made. And I understood what they're saying. It's a simple concept, especially on the on-axis, off-axis readings.
Correct.
So the way I understand it is if you look at a cone effect, the on-axis is the direct line down the middle.
Yes.
Where the off-axis are on the sides of the cones. So what they're saying is that we weren't getting direct on-axis readings. All the readings were off-axis. So the receivers, who are the spot where the noise ends up, where it goes to, are not really, you're not really getting an idea what these receivers are hearing or the level of sound that they're hearing. So that was one concept that I understood very clearly and simply. The other one that you mentioned is this octave band data. So that measures at all different layers, where the sound, how the sound is traveling.
Frequencies, yes.
And they felt that was something that was necessary and wasn't provided in that 2019 sound sense study. The other item is that the study didn't address the acoustic instruments and amplifiers that are not routed through the house system. So you got the speakers that you're measuring with all those prior items that I mentioned, off axis, on axis, and the broadband sound. But then you might have a drum set that's not playing through the system, or some other instruments that are acoustic that are not going through the speakers. They need to be measured. The sound from those instruments need to be measured. So we need that data. And the last thing I had, which you addressed, which we don't need, is whether the music entertainment permit is in place, and I guess it is. So the other question I had was, with regard to the stipulation, and this is out of your area, out of your purview, but if we decide as a board to make certain conditions for our approval of this stage, and it differs from some of the stipulations that the agreement that the board has made with the applicant, do they need to have a formal amendment to the stipulation, or is that something that we can do on our own and it acts as a condition that they need to follow?
It's a town board issue.
So the town board would have to amend the stipulation if we decide that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. To be clear, we did do readings on access as well as off. So I can clarify it with them, because there are certain spots that they probably don't realize it was direct line of sight to the speaker if you could look through the trees or whatever.
Okay, well, you can explain that to.
Yeah, to them.
I think you could play a sound engineer on TV, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I want to give you an example. I know Paul Monti, when he was at Gurney's, there was this, it was called Day and Night. And they would come out on a Saturday or something, and it would just blow the sound out and everyone go wild and crazy. And Paul's like going, how do we handle this? And I said, okay, I'll do the analysis. I'll tell you what the treatment is, but you're going to also have to do put a limiter on it, because there is no way that we're going to be able to stop the sound for the nearest neighbor. And Paul was very adamant about, he did not want to violate any code. So that's exactly what happened, and told him what needed to happen in terms of the installation, materials, install, all that done. And then right before each time, so they couldn't fiddle with it, because it's different, because this is the way, Surf Lodge is actually a DSP, so it's solidified within the software. There it was, this guide, switching lower and higher or whatever it was, so amplifier lowered or whatever. But right before every event, I would go there and I would look at the data in terms of the octave bands. Actually, I look at the 1/3 octave bands and identify which ones needed to be lowered. I went there and I basically told them how many dB each one had to be lowered, went back to the nearest neighbor boundary line. Yes, indeed, it met it or whatever. And then I showed Paul how he needed to keep track of that, so that after I left, they didn't try to tweak it up a little bit. I said, look, if this number comes up above this, then this is what you need to do. And I showed him an app and how he controlled it.
Okay.
That's
So-
fine. One last point.
Okay. Don't bring up octaves again.
What?
Don't bring up octaves again. Go. All right.
The other thing that AKRF mentioned is the sound propagation might be underestimated with the sound going across the water as opposed to with the sound going over land. because the land absorbs the sound, the water doesn't. So that's another item that they brought up, which I think is important because there are residents across the water as well.
Yeah, we took readings all over the place. I don't think we included those.
And for the board, I just want to mention that this requires a special permit. And one of the standards of the special permit is the noise hazard, that we are satisfied with, that there isn't a hazard with the noise level. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking for when we get the.
It does, apparently. But special permit, different.
And lastly, I'm okay with waiving the lighting plan. However, what happens if with the stage, and I've seen it myself, I've been there, sometimes what they do is they put lighting on, this isn't your area, but they put lighting on the stage for, special lighting for certain concerts, certain artists. How do we handle that? Since there is no lighting plan and they decide to put lighting on an ad hoc basis.
And maybe the musicians decide to do it themselves, right?
So how do we handle that if there's no lighting plan? Or should there be a lighting plan with that kind of thing being considered?
Eric, is that part of like a special permit for an event, for example?
Yeah, I was going to say to get special permission to add, temporary lighting for such an event. It would be non-compliant lighting. So if any lighting is proposed, it should be included in this site plan application. That's, permanent lighting.
But since there are such restrictions, as per the stipulation, the music is only up until 8 p.m. and it is summer months. So
it's light
out.
That's a good point. Yeah, exactly. But Eric makes a good point, though. If there's any anticipation that there would be something, we should know that now.
And this is a technical question also, but not too technical, I hope. Do the musical acts at the Surf Lodge bring their own sound equipment, or is it sound equipment that is at Surf Lodge permanently?
It basically goes right into the sound system, the house sound system. So it's all fed into that system through those speakers, and it's all with the limiter that is set, and that's permanent.
So they don't bring amps or things that are extra and external to the sound system?
No, but they might bring drums, and this is something that I worked out, Ben Krupinski, when he was alive at East Hampton Point, he wanted to have this band playing every once in a while for like weddings. And so I basically said, okay, if that's the case, they can't go there, they have to go here, and this is what you put behind them or kind of around, whatever it is, and that solved the problem of the neighbors complaining.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
The speakers are all fixed? They're not adjustable?
They will be slightly adjusted. Say, for example, they're moving the stage, so you can't have the one speaker that's going this way when you really wanted to like shoot it into the corner of the building as opposed to straight out, which is what this will allow.
Right. John?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that a picture of the existing stage shows permanent lighting in the back, permanently attached lighting.
Okay, to the shell?
Yeah.
Of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's lighting there now.
All right, so we will need some comments on
lighting,
that, and as well as what things that might come up periodically for special events. We want some feeling about that. Okay.
If I may.
Stay close, okay.
Any sort of special event requires a special event permit that's issued separately. We really can't predict the future on what type of event it's going to be or what type of equipment those people will want to use, but we'd have to obtain a separate permit for that.
Right.
That's not really this purview.
But I think what Eric, if you can just clarify the point you were making earlier, which is that some knowledge of what might happen within what's compliant. How do we sort of frame that out in a way that's useful for people to plan events, right? So that they're not doing something that won't be compliant. Kirk, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I don't know that the burden falls on the planning board to necessarily anticipate
No, it's on the
that.
applicant. It's on the applicant, code enforcement.
Yeah, but I'm saying just to ensure through this application that that's the case. If they're proposing no exterior lighting, then the only lighting beyond, anything else that's existing on site that would be permitted is anything that was permitted in association with a special approval from the town board and a special event permit. If they're applying for a special event and want to have lighting associated with it, the special events committee would review that proposal. They don't need an approval from the planning board for that lighting, as long as they get the special approval through a special event permit.
Okay, and that would include lighting. They would be.
Yeah, we're not talking about permanent lighting. If they're proposing to affix lighting to the top of the stage that is going to be available for, at all times, irrespective of a special event, then absolutely, just like any other, exterior lighting in any other application, they would need to get approval from the planning board for it. But if it is something that's temporary and associated with an event that they have a permit for, and they've made, that made it known to the town board and to the special events permit committee that they're going to be doing that, then they would be allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I thought you had said something slightly different, but that's good. That's fine. That's easier. Okay. Thanks. I want to go back and just wrap up the sound question for a moment. We've learned a lot tonight. But, the people that really need to feel comfortable with this are, number one, our consultants. And then, we need to be able to interpret this at the layman level to everyone else who's concerned about this, right? So I think what we need to think about is, how do we proceed? Do we, the question here is written is, do we want to have a new, more current analysis, sound study done, or do we need to have a discussion with AKRF?
Can I make a suggestion in light of the applicant bringing a written response that they'll submit into the record tomorrow? I think maybe the most appropriate thing to do is for that to be referred to our consultants to see if it answered, any or all of their concerns, have them review that, and then follow up with a report to the planning board.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that comment. Do we all agree that that's the right thing to do at this point, rather than go straight to do it again?
Yeah, especially since the data was taken last July as opposed to 2019.
All right.
Extensive data, and it's best, the procedure that normally we go through, it doesn't matter which side we're on this, is that it is specified the data that they would like, and then we provide that. They would basically say how the format, and then we just provide that because it is extensive, and I can actually explain to them which of the readings were on axis and which were off, and which ones kind of showed superposition. And please tell them not to be insulted that I talked about what the definition of superposition is. It's not for them. They know what it is. It was basically to help you guys understand better what it is. And I just think it's really neat, the whole concept.
Well, and I'm sure they do too. Right. So thank you very much. It's an important, very important issue, as you've heard from all of us, that we get this right.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your input. We really appreciate it. David, did you have any other comments that you wanted to make? You were heading up to the podium earlier.
One comment, which I'm sure you'll consult with your counsel over, is, there are terms of that stipulation of settlement. I believe what we're proposing here doesn't require that to be redone. That those things were implemented, and here we are asking for a change to the proper procedures for a structure through the site plan process. So that's my legal opinion. I'm sure your counsel will advise, how they feel as well. And just to be clear, this is just a site plan application. The special permit for this use is existing. We're not reapplying for a special permit here. So I wanted just to clarify that.
Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. We'll ask our questions and then wrap this up. Does the planning board, the question is now going to be modified. Does the planning board require a new sound study to be submitted using more recent data and that addresses the AKRF comments? Let's change that to, does the planning board agree that a discussion between AKRF and SoundSense, should that be made to happen as the next step?
Yes.
All agreed?
Yes.
Okay. Does the planning board agree that the requirement to show dimensions between each building structure and use can be waived on the survey?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
That's fair.
Everyone, Ava, yes. Jen?
Yeah.
All around? John, Reed, Bruce, okay. Does the planning board agree that a comprehensive lighting and landscaping plans can be waived? I think we've decided that's probably yes, since there will be none, and we've discussed the issue of lighting on the stage. So we're good on that. So yeah, the final question is, if the planning board does not wish the applicant to conduct a new sound study and waive other requirements, does the board believe the application is complete? It is not complete because we need to have this discussion about the sound with our consultants.
Study.
In lieu of a new study.
And may I make one other suggestion?
Please.
Question. I know on the current survey, there's the proposed parking from the last site plan approval. Is it possible to require clean survey site plan with like changing the designation of all of that to as-built parking or whatever the term is, so that we're not confused as to what's being proposed? And that, so that when the next planning board goes back to look at this, they're not confused as to what this.
I mean, it's all just a shell. I mean, there's no lines, there's no dividers between those parking spaces. That's kind of just shown to show the number based on size.
Can you remove the word proposed so that it doesn't look like it's part of this, this application?
Yeah, not a problem.
Sorry, it's
So,
picky, but.
no, that's good. No, so while we're on that subject of things that may be there or not there that are on the survey, Sarah, do we want to have the daybeds noted as structures? Are they structures? Are they to be noted on a new survey?
Oh, yeah, I believe the daybed structure should be shown on the survey and applied for at this time.
And applied for,
if they're to remain.
Right.
It's my understanding that they're not permanent. I will check on that, but that's my understanding. And I don't believe at this point that they're being proposed to remain. So I'll speak with our client and see if we're
Right, if they have a roof over them, they are considered to be structures, so.
I understand that.
But that's something that can be clarified through Sarah and the planning department.
Yeah, so they're
Okay.
in this area.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so
Thank
that's
you.
the final thing. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So we have two things to discuss as a board and to provide comments to the town board tonight. One is the affordable housing unit definition, a code change around that. The rent restricted employer sponsored housing code change is the second one. I know that there are two people in the audience who are very attached to these code changes. And just to say, this is not a public hearing for the planning board regarding these code changes. This is our conversation. There will be a town board public hearing around these code changes if they decide to move forward. So just to say that we're not taking public comment at this point. So Eric, I think you're going to walk us through these first, and then we'll discuss.
Yeah, so as you said, both of these are proposed changes to the town code, to the zoning chapter. The first pertains to the definition of an affordable housing unit. So what I'm going to do is put up on the screen that code section with, you'll see clearly highlighted the proposed changes. And I know I'm zoomed out a little bit here. I'll zoom in a second. But basically, right now, the definition of an affordable housing unit, in order to be one, a housing unit, it's, you can see the code here. It says an apartment or residence, and it gives subsection 1 is a maximum rent that can be charged for something to be deemed an affordable housing unit. Section 2 is the maximum initial sales price. So in the past, all of the affordable housing units that have been created, whether they be apartments within commercial structures or affordable housing developments that have come in front of the planning board, they have proposed either to rent the units or to sell them. So, there's been that sort of contrast. This section of the code, what you can see here at the bottom of part 1 is adding the word "and." The code right now doesn't have an "and" or an "or" in that section. So we haven't come across this yet, but if someone were proposing a model that involved both a sale, an initial sale of the unit, and then a subsequent rent, the code right now is unclear about whether or not one of those applies, both of those apply. So this proposed code change would add an "and," and then it would also clarify at the bottom, probably more to the point here, and I'll zoom in on that where there is proposed to be both an initial sale and a subsequent rental, that both standards would apply. So in other words, the rent would have to be in conformance with the maximum that's allowed to be charged, and the initial sales price would also have to comply with that. And that is in the definition already of an affordable housing unit. That's this calculation that you see for maximum initial sales price. But basically, this is a clarification of the code. There's an ambiguity in it right now as to whether or not both the rental and the initial sales price maximums comply. This would make it clear that both apply if both a rental and a sales component are proposed for the creation of an affordable housing unit.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Right. Any thoughts on this? I think this is pretty straightforward. I think it really opens up the way for the second code change, essentially, in my view.
I just want to make a point of clarification. I checked with Eric on this, so he clarified for me, but I want to bring it up in front of the board. And I think it's of the interest of the gentlemen who are here tonight in the audience. So the way I read this is that take a project that is for affordable housing, that the developers want to sell the units to employers who then rent those units to their employees. So this code change, what this says is that those units can only be sold at a maximum amount, which is, they have that formula there, depending on how many members of the family or how many bedrooms. So for instance, a 4-family unit, which the maximum level of income, I think, is $214,000 or something, somewhere around there. So according to this formula, that you cannot sell that unit to that family for more than 3 times that $214,000, which would be about $645,000.
Correct.
Now, what that does, in my view, because my concern was always with these types of projects, that it gave them a competitive edge against potential developers who wanted to develop that land, not for workforce housing, but for affordable housing, traditional affordable housing, year-round residents. What this does, in my view, and I just want to make sure everybody agrees, is that this levels the playing field. So now the developer cannot sell these units at a market value to the employers. They need to be capped at a certain amount. That's the way I understand it.
That doesn't apply to the rent, to the second The rent restricted employer sponsored housing.
Is going to be a different,
This is just for things that are literally affordable housing in this definition.
Eric, didn't you say it applied to the,
So this is just to clarify the definition of affordable housing. So models that do not fit this definition would be a model that does not apply an initial maximum initial sales price, and if applicable, the cap on rent.
Yeah, so under the situation Lou was describing, this would make it so that, you know, if you wanted to create a unit, sell it at an open market rate, but then rent it at an affordable rate, you couldn't do that. To be an affordable housing unit, that initial sale would also have to be at an affordable rate, and then the subsequent rent would be. I think it's important to note, you know, because we're starting to kind of mix these two code changes. They are related. It is a segue, though, that the next code change, the rent restricted employer housing, is the idea of having a model which involves if somebody wanted to build a unit, sell it at market rate, and then subsequently make it affordable, that they could do that. So this essentially closes it where an affordable housing unit, to be deemed that, you can't have that model. The next use we're going to talk about, the proposed use to the code, it would open up an opportunity for someone who was seeking to do that to have that model of a housing development.
and for this one, the purchaser, if it was something that was being sold, would also have to fit into the income requirements
Yes.
for the purchase of the house. So it
Yes.
works on both ends. It's not being, the sales price has to be low enough, but the person who's purchasing it also has to have an income that fits into the affordable housing. And the income for a family of four would be the $214,000 that you spoke of.
right, but what I was concerned with is the sales price. Doesn't this code section limit the sales price, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
For affordable housing units, which are
Only for-
different from the other ones that you're talking about.
Housing.
Rent restricted employer sponsored
This
housing.
doesn't apply to workforce housing.
Correct.
Correct.
Just affordable
That
housing.
piece of it does not. Yeah.
The sales price piece of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are a few things that are not quite the same, but that's the principal one.
Eric will go through the rent restricted employer sponsored housing separately. Let's look at them separately.
Right. And that will help.
Okay.
I don't have any particular comments on the first piece, the affordable housing unit definition piece. I think it's an enabling, you know, change. I think that allows us to look at the second piece. I don't have any specific comments really on it. Does anyone?
No, the only thing I was going to say, you did bring up, you know, it levels the playing field. It does level the playing field in terms of being able to continue to provide affordable housing if someone was to sell, and it perpetuates that affordable housing unit.
It keeps it in the affordable housing.
It keeps it,
pool.
right, it keeps it going, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
And I think that's wise.
Any other comments on this piece of it? Okay, this first one? Okay. All right. Eric, take us through rent restricted employer sponsored housing.
Okay. So I'm going to share on the screen the draft code for this, but it's a number of pages, so it's not a great visual, but it can help if we need to go through the specific provisions here. But basically the idea here, so, you know, the previous one was a change to some of the wording of an existing definition of an affordable housing unit. This concept is a new use that would be added to the town code called rent restricted employer sponsored housing or housing development. So basically this would not be true affordable housing, you know, for the reasons that we just went through. Mainly under this model, there wouldn't be a cap on initial sales price of units. But basically the idea here is to, you know, open up an avenue for a different type of housing development that, although not meeting the strict definition of affordable housing, does provide housing to a needed segment of the population, does provide housing that has an affordability component to it. So you can see on the screen here, you have a definition. It's a little bit involved because it involves reference to other sections of the code. But I think maybe the most important thing here to consider is that what we did was we really started out with an affordable housing development and the special permit standards that exist in the code for that use. That's the most comparable use. It's a large-scale multi-unit housing development. So a lot of the restrictions that exist for that use are appropriate for this one too. That includes the dimensional requirements, setbacks, lot coverage, all of those things, the minimum lot area. So, you know, for an affordable housing development, dimensional regulations go by the MF multifamily zoning district. We carried that over and proposed that here. The minimum lot area requirement would be the same of roughly 3 acres. The density permitted would be the same, 8 units per acre or up to 12 units per acre if there's an additional special permit approved by the planning board and the applicant meets certain extra conditions, including providing sewage treatment. The maximum number of units on site would be 60. You know, all the required services, public water, design requirements, so recreational areas, private outdoor spaces, the size limitations on units would all be the same. Legal requirements would be the same. Importantly, the planning board, under the requirements for an affordable housing development, can require any and all legal documents necessary to ensure a number of aspects of the development, one of them being that it remains in perpetuity available to moderate income families. We carried that over here so that the board has the authority to require any legal encumbrances on the property to ensure that it's properly managed and would, you know, continue to be throughout the life of the facility. And then importantly also in here, just like we would have in an affordable housing development, are a cap on the maximum rent and a cap on tenant income, not a cap on initial sales price of a unit. So, you know, some of the things though that we added in here, and I want to scroll down a little bit here. Obviously we added definitions. We also are envisioning this use to allow condominiums to be created. That would allow a developer to create the affordable housing units in a large scale development in multiple residences or buildings that contain multiple units, but section off those units as individual pieces of real property that could be sold. That's important for this model that we're looking at. We also worked in a number of tenant protections. So you'll see here, I'm putting up on the screen the section that relates to affordability and tenant protections. All of the dwelling units have to be available for moderate income families, which means that income limitation, the rent has to meet the maximum rent that's designated for an affordable housing unit. The occupancy, so the idea here is that what we're expecting is that a developer would create units, condominium units most likely, and then would sell them to an individual employer so that they could put their employees in the unit. Obviously, that raises questions of tenant protection, you know, where you have a tenant that is also working for their landlord. We do envision this to also accommodate seasonal tenants and seasonal employees. So what's worked in here is having a grace period of 6 months for an employee after their employment would be terminated, you know, or until the end of a current lease term. You know, and then also there's a provision in here that, you know, really tenant protections are governed by New York state law. So there's a reference in here to that as well. One of the other important things here, which you'll see, is Part 5, authority granted, and then management. But an idea here is to empower the Office of Housing and Community Development to promulgate additional rules and regulations for such a development. Now, again, you know, one of the ways that this model deviates from affordable housing developments that the board has seen before is that you're not going to have one central authority that, you know, owns all of the housing units and manages it as such. You know, with developments that the East Hampton Housing Authority or Windmill have done, they are the sole, you know, owner and manager of the development. You know, they also generally enter into agreements with New York State Homes and Community Renewal that govern, you know, the rules of how things are going to function. So obviously in this case, where we're not expecting that it's going to be a developer that, you know, is being subject to those conditions and they're a private developer, we want to have the town have some authority to create rules and regulations unique to such a development. So the code would have a provision in it that the Office of Housing could come up with rules that dictate the management and the oversight of the development. Those rules would have to be adopted by the town board through a public process, but there's a provision in there to do that. The last really sort of unique aspect of this relates to the same idea, but is a requirement that there be a third-party management group that oversees the, you know, continued operation of the facility. Again, you know, with most affordable housing developments that you would have the housing authority or a central entity that, you know, is a certified housing corporation that exists only for the purposes of that development and managing it and managing the finances of it and the operation. We feel it's necessary, if we are going to permit this model, to have a third-party management entity be a requirement of the town code. That would be reviewed by, again, the Office of Housing to make sure that it's appropriate. But we feel with those added oversights that the deviations of this model from a traditional affordable housing development that cause concern, which, you know, largely are, how will it be managed and run? You know, how will we ensure affordability in the future? You know, how will the tenants be protected if they're employees of the landlord, the business that owns it? We feel we've worked those safeguards into this draft code. You know, hopefully the planning board, you know, well, the planning board's looked at it, and hopefully you can put together some comments for the town board this evening. You know, the town board has reviewed this concept. They did so last week. They were in support of the general concept, but, you know, under the town code, it's required to get comments from the planning board. But they also commented, the town board, that is, that the next step should be running this by the planning board. So we want to get your thoughts on it. I guess the last thing to mention too is that, you know, one of the things, and this is related to a concept that Lou brought up of the, you know, a different model out competing traditional affordable housing developments. We're proposing that this use, you know, would require a special permit, but would also only be permitted on properties that have the designation of both the Affordable Housing Overlay District and the Limited Business Overlay District. The reason for this is that, you know, this model contains a housing component, an affordable housing component. It's a large scale, you know, multiple residence, multiple unit housing development. The type of the zoning designation that we have that designates properties that are appropriate for that is the Affordable Housing Overlay District designation. However, if the two large scale housing developments that you're allowed to do just in the AHO are affordable housing development, which is subject to all of these extra restrictions, often requires money from the state or county or even the town, and accompanying those are extra regulations. If you have that as one option, and then you have the other option being a private developer that can come in and build the same number of units and sell them on the open market, you know, and I should have mentioned too, with the affordable housing development, the initial sales price of units, if they are going to sell them, is capped. This would outcompete that. So we don't want those to be options that are both permitted in the AHO. However, as I said previously, this is a multi-unit housing development. It's the AHO is an appropriate designation for those type of developments. So we looked at that, and then we also considered this has a commercial component to it. We really want to see these around the peripheries of downtowns or adjacent to commercial areas that provide employment opportunities, provide goods and services. And one of the zoning designations that's appropriate for that is the LBO. So, there are only a limited number of properties that have the AHO or the LBO designation. The LBO is limited to properties that are on North Main Street and Montauk Highway. There are 2 properties in the town right now that have both the AHO designation and the LBO designation. One is a vacant privately owned property. The other is the Gansett Meadows Affordable Housing Development, which is already developed. So, that limitation on which zones this is permitted in will limit the applicability of the use. That's really what we've come up with so far. This is a draft code. The town board is looking for the planning board's comments on it. So I will leave you to discuss and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Eric. That's very, very helpful. I'm going to kick it off with my comments on what you just said. I totally support this model. I think it's a really great idea to bring private money into the workforce housing, affordable housing realm. I think it's a really great idea. We don't know yet exactly how it's going to go over. Is 60 units, 48 units, whatever. How many is going to be enough, basically, right? Do we know that yet? We really don't know what the market will support. So, I do think while the restriction of having essentially one buildable lot in town, that is where this would be permitted, maybe feel rather onerous, but I have a feeling that if this works well, that won't be such a problem down the line. My other 2 comments on this is that I wonder if 130% of AMI is really too low. I think about the people that we really want to have in town and what they can make with overtime and so on and so forth, people who are really, essential to life in East Hampton. Maybe that's not high enough. I know there's been some discussion in the planning department, the legal department, and among people on the board about the idea of specifying a class of folks who might be carved out of that exemption. But I think that there's some legal issues around that we can't really quite anticipate yet. It hasn't sort of been tested out. There's no case law. So that's one thing I want to throw out is that perhaps it's not high enough to include some of the people that we really want to have around town.
And if I can add to this, or add to what you're saying, this wouldn't classify as affordable housing as defined or affordable housing units. So, the code provisions for this use wouldn't be necessarily restricted by the income cap or the rental cap of an affordable housing unit. Right, so exactly. That's certainly something the town board can consider as an amendment to this.
Yeah, so I think that's potentially on the table, and that's a comment that I would like to make. The other one is I don't really know that the 3-acre minimum site is really necessary, particularly, right? It seems to me there might be an opportunity with this model to produce units on smaller lots, particularly closer to the business districts in town. I think that might be an impediment that we'll find is really something that we'd want to later deal with. But it feels to me that smaller scaled options might be. I can think of a few. Myself, actually, the small, opportunities to build at a smaller scale might be, if it's profitable to the private sector, it might be a good thing.
I think I agree with you.
Well, then Jen, go ahead by all means.
One of the things I was going to bring up also was the income requirement for renters, and I do think you're right. I think that raising that, maybe the town could think about, a different a different calculation for that, because there are people who are couples, who are professionals, the people we want to stay here are doctors, our teachers, our coaches, all of the people we want to encourage to live and work in this town. And I think to exclude them because of an income requirement might be detrimental to the effect that this is designed to have on keeping people in this town. That's interesting too about smaller lot sizes, because 3 acres is big, and there probably aren't as many 3-acre properties that are designated already LBO that you could add the AHO designation to if they were less than 3 acres. And I 100% support this model as well. And I think right now, there being the one property that it's possible on, see how it goes. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, I'll take the other side of the argument. And excuse my obstinacy, but I need to get clarity on this. So let's just use numbers as an example. The numbers that I was using earlier. So you have 2 developers. One developer is developing workforce housing. The other one is developing affordable housing.
What other developer would be the town?
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, by definition.
The real developer is going to do.
Yeah, they're not going to.
Affordable housing.
No.
Okay, so even if it's the town. The workforce housing developer can sell those units to employers.
Well, is meant to sell them to employers. It's by definition.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. But they can sell to the employer at market value.
Yeah, right.
So the example that I used earlier, whereas the town, in this case, affordable housing, would be able to sell to a four-person family $645,000, whereas the affordable housing developer could sell that same unit for maybe 3 times that, twice that.
You mean the employer-sponsored housing?
For the workforce housing?
Employer-sponsored housing.
Except for.
Yeah, the point that I'm getting to is that the employer-sponsored housing developer has a competitive edge. And that competitive edge is that they can sell the units at market value. To me, in my mind, what that does is it takes away the availability for locations that can be developed for affordable housing units.
Traditional town-sponsored affordable.
To me, that's a problem. Obviously, unless people don't understand this, but obviously that's not a problem to a lot of other people. But to me, that's a problem, because to me, the most important, and I'm not against workforce housing and what, these
Employer-sponsored, let's call it employer-sponsored, do not confuse things.
I think it's a good thing. It's just that this one part of it is a problem for me because of that competitive edge that it gives them. So we will never, any location that's available for affordable housing, whether it's employer-sponsored housing or traditional affordable housing, is going to go to the employer-sponsored housing. So maybe that's not a big issue for a lot of people, but for me it is. And that's just the point that I'm making.
Okay.
Now, to say to what Eric said is that the disadvantage that the employer-sponsored housing has, that the affordable housing developer doesn't have, the disadvantage is that the way this is being proposed is that this type of housing can only go in limited business overlay district and affordable housing.
Exactly.
So that is a limitation that the other group doesn't have.
Right.
So I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you still have the financial advantage. And for me, it's a problem.
Okay, anyone else want to comment on that?
I think that both these are proactive solutions, and I totally support them. We have a workforce housing crisis out here, and I'm totally in line with you, Mr. Krug. I'd take it a step further though. On the income, I would give the town board a number, perhaps. I'm not an expert at this thing, but just to kind of throw it out to them that it should be higher. Maybe we take it 25% higher than 130. Maybe you come in at 160%, which I think would be a better starting point. But that's just my take on it. So,
Okay, thanks, Reed. Anybody else?
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I think this is a great idea. I think it's a great model. I think it's something we really, really need. And I would be really interested to see how well this model works on a smaller lot. Yeah. To me, that's actually really kind of interesting. A big lot, you can do, whatever. But a smaller lot would be actually really interesting to see what kind of model can be produced. So, yeah, I think it's great.
John?
Yeah, I agree. They're both needed solutions to a problem here. And to open it up to make it as less restrictive as possible, I think is a good thing. By reducing the requirement for 3 acres and maybe increasing the maximum income for professionals that can't afford to live here. Is needed. It's a needed solution.
Ava, you want to chime in?
Yes. So I'm kind of on both sides here. I'm going to make a comment. What's good for some is not good for all. While I do agree with your point in terms of bringing, private money in and whatnot, I think that's good. My concern is that the employers that would be able to purchase these said units at market value are not, in my point of view, is not the school district, is not the hospitals, are not the areas of concern, the town, of the employees we're really looking to fulfill seats out here and to keep out here. I think they're more seasonal, money-backed organizations that are here for Memorial Day to Labor Day, and you'll see a pretty high rate of turnover. And as a local business owner, I can say, while I would love to be able to provide housing to some of my younger people that are struggling to live out here, that's not a benefit that I would be able to, offer as a local business owner. So that's my main concern. I think that it's solving a small aspect of a problem for a limited group of people. I do think that it's a good test model, especially having the restriction for the lot needing to be in the AHO and the, what is it? My acronyms are all. LDO, yeah. So I do think in that respect, it's constrained to a very limited one area right now. So that's my 50-50 on it.
It's a good point.
It is a good point.
It's a good point. I do think that, anecdotally, what I understand is that there are a lot of folks who have really raised their hand and sort of said, we're in, including the hospital. But, we will see, this is really.
Yeah.
By the way, Ed, the development on 3 Mile Harbor Road, isn't that a private developer?
No.
No, that was a town.
The town, the town hires someone to build it, and there's.
The builder's private.
Yeah, the builder is private.
Yeah.
The builder's private.
And they're the management company, I think. Too.
Yeah, in this case they are.
Just so you know, we have a mix of developments, like Windmill, for example, is a private housing corporation. They're not, affiliated with the town. So we have a mix of town projects and, private housing corporations that have built affordable housing developments.
But there are developers who search out properties that are available for affordable housing and then develop it to a certain extent. Maybe not in the same way that, but for instance, the one that I brought up, the 3 Mile Harbor property.
Georgica Green Ventures is a perfect example of that, yeah.
So that's a private developer that found that property, developed it with the town help, but it was a private developer that did it. So you have private developers competing for these locations.
With the towns,
And they,
collaborating with the government.
That's neither here nor there. You have private developers that are searching for properties where they can develop affordable housing. In one case, it's affordable housing. The other case, it's, what is it called?
Employer-sponsored.
Sponsored. Okay, just wanted to make that point.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, Katie is listening, right? Katie is, yeah. No questions on this. So I think we've captured our comments. Thank you, everybody, for being thoughtful about it. And we'll go from here,
Yep, I will draft something and check it with you, Ed, and we'll run it by the board before we send it out.
Awesome.
All right, good. All right, so ends our comments. Hi, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So our regular meeting, we have a few items on to quickly go through. The Seacrest Pool and Shed Site Plan Resolution of Approval. Lou, that is you.
Let me find it. In the matter of the application of Seacrest Pool and Shed Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-110-1-12. I have read the site plan approval and I move for its adoption.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All around, unanimous, passed and carried. Thank you. Okay, second, Smart Store Site Plan Special Permit Resolution for Extension of Time. Bruce.
That's me, all right. In the matter of the application of Smart Store Site Plan Special Permit, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-184-1-8.11. This is an extension of time for 1 year. I have read the resolution and move for its approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passed and carried. All right, I have the next two, I think. The Joseph Potter Site Plan. This is an old one. In the matter of the application of Joseph Potter Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-150-1-1.14 for an extension of time to May 15th, 2020. May 15th, 2026. Is this correct, Eric? Do we?
Let me take a look at it real quick.
That doesn't seem like a huge extension of time.
Yeah, maybe it's 2027, yeah. All right, while you're doing that, let's go to Amadou.
Yeah, you might want to.
Yeah. Amadou and Koskosidis. I had a long time to practice that when we were talking about that. I'm going to say it again just for kicks. Amadou and Koskosidis. Minor subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-197-3-10. Extension of time until March 25th, 2027. I have read this resolution and call for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Boom, boom, boom. So while Eric is looking at that, let's talk about the minutes. Any changes, comments, mistakes?
Mosswood.
Oh,
Oh,
is that it?
that's right.
Mosswood.
Is that assigned to someone?
You.
To me. There you go. Okay. This is another old
Oh,
one.
you.
The Schwenk property on Montauk Highway. Mosswood preliminary subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-157-2-15.3 and 16. Extension of time. I've read this resolution and call for its adoption. I'm just scanning for the date on this. April 3rd, 2027. Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. What do we think about the Potter extension, Eric?
Okay, so I looked at it and I believe it is correct. I think the reason why it's only until May 15th is because of the conditions and timeframes of the previous approval. You can only extend it in increments. So I think you can only extend it to May 15th of this year, and then they would need to get another extension of time. I can double check check with Katie tomorrow, but at the if anything, it would be more time that you could grant them. So I think you're fine to adopt it.
All right, fine, yeah. Right, we had since November of 2000 to work on this, which is interesting. All right, so I'll reread it. Joseph Potter site plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-150-1-1.14, extension of time. I have read the resolution to extend this until May 15th of this year. Ask for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Anybody feel strongly about the minutes? Beautiful, yeah. Motion to adopt the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right, and seconded?
Second.
All right, Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. And then finally, someone?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeton.
I'll second.
Okay, passed and carried, or do I need to go for a vote? Okay.
All approved. John wants to stay.
Good.
Yeah, let's stay with
Thank